For those of you who don't know Justina already, let me give you a brief introduction. Justina Froese is a health and wellness counselor certified in Esteem Dynamics, a motivation and well-being approach by psychologist Dr. Doug Lisle. From an obese and sick family background, she struggled with chronic dieting and binging for 15 years before adopting a whole food, plant-based diet and principles of calorie density. Her goal is to assist individuals in achieving a binge-free life and adopting healthy habits, emphasizing the significant role personality plays in adhering to a healthy diet and acknowledging that there are challenges of reaching a healthy weight on a standard Western diet. Justina, I love what you're doing, and especially because you look at the root of where these challenges are coming from and where they're perpetuating from. And I am sure that many of our listeners can identify with those challenges that come up and want to make some permanent changes. So maybe you could start by telling us a little bit about your story.
Of course. So my health journey began when I was around 12, 13 years old. I'm almost 35 now.
Mm-hmm.
And it started with that I was a chubby child. And when I became 12, 13 around, all the boys were interested in my girlfriends, but not in me. And children and family members and others bullied me for my weight. So I was not quite overweight, but I was chubby.
Mm-hmm.
And at that point, I've noticed, okay, I need to change something. And the only way I knew how to change something was by restriction, by calorie restriction and restricting my food. So I was eating less. And of course, I lost the weight. But the problem was I gained all the weight back due to binges and on top of that. And from that moment on, I was a chronic dieter for almost 15 years and dealt with binge eating at the same time. So it was not an easy youth. And then in 2013, I found about the documentary Forks Over Knives, and Dr. Doug Lisle was also a part of this documentary. And from that moment on, it clicked for me. It was like an epiphany moment for me. So I knew I found something. And from that moment on, everything changed. So the documentary is about how our modern food supply makes us overweight, sick, and obese. And how, this food contributes to an unhealthy lifestyle that we eat. And as soon as I started to eat the way this documentary said it's the best way to do, my binge eating stopped. And a couple of years later, I contacted Dr. Doug Lisle, the psychologist, and who is the author of the book The Pleasure Trap. And he explains in depth what the modern food supply is doing to us, and especially how it hijacks our nervous system and what it does to our brain and health. And I got in contact with him, and I was a lucky one who he was my teacher, and he taught me many things on psychology, on healthy eating. And now I'm helping people to live a healthy lifestyle, to become binge-free, and at the same time reach a healthy weight.
That's so awesome. I love your story. It's so nice that you were able to make those changes and now are able to help other people to also make changes. So maybe you could talk a little bit about what is the Western, or I'll call it the standard American diet as well, it's called, or the SAD diet.
SAD diet.
Maybe you could talk a little bit about what that is and why it is such a challenge. What is it that's giving us these issues?
Yeah, modern world brought us many tremendous opportunities and a more luxury life, and that's good. But when it comes to our food supply, it's like a disaster, I would say, because the food we eat nowadays on the SAD or standard American diet, which is, by the way, in Europe, it's almost the same diet, that the foods we eat are highly processed. Our ancestors ate a diet that was natural, things you could find in nature, like vegetables, fruits, nuts, seeds, legumes, starches, and they were not processed. But the foods like candy, cake, pizza, pasta with oily sauce, these are highly processed foods. And the problem is they taste so good. And I tell you why, because our nervous system always seeks the highest calorie dense food in the environment. That's for a reason, because the number one death cause of our ancestors was starvation. So for this reason, it's a very clever mechanism, always seek a very rich food, because that's how the nervous system makes sure to store up some extra fat for the next famine. But the problem is that nowadays we live in abundance when it comes to food, and our Stone Age brain doesn't care that we live in the modern world. And the problem is that most people who are on a diet try to solve this problem with their rational part of the brain by, for example, just trying to eat less food or eating those foods in moderation. But how can you eat foods in moderation that are addictive to your nervous system? And yeah, this is the problem with the standard Western diet.
Okay. And so you advocate a whole food plant-based diet. So maybe you could talk a little bit of what is that and why is that a better option for people?
You mean a better option than the standard Western
Yes.
diet? Or yeah. The better option is because these are the foods you were designed to eat. These foods are foods like you can find in nature, and they're whole and natural. They're full of vitamins, nutrients, and of fiber. So your body is perfectly designed to digest those foods and get all the nutrient it needs from those foods. And the good thing about that is if people focus on eating the foods they were designed to eat by nature, everyone reaches a healthy weight without eating foods in moderation, without dieting, without counting calories. That's the beauty. And these are not only the foods that make you slim, these are also the foods that make you healthy at the same time. They nourish your body and they give you the results that you desire.
And I'm assuming that means that you're not looking at portion control and any of that when you're eating a whole food plant-based diet.
No, not at all. Because the good thing is people ask, yeah, but what about if I overeat or anything like that? The good thing about those foods are that they're so rich in fiber and nutrients that your stomach, that is equipped with a set of stretch and nutrient receptors, and if you eat those foods, your stomach get stretched for a reasonable amount and signals to your brain, hey, I'm full. You will eat a lot of food compared to the standard Western diet, which is a good thing in my personal opinion, because I like to eat a lot of good, healthy foods. But with way less calories than you would say by eating a pizza or fries, something like that, that's high in fat. And you will not gain weight, you will lose weight. And the interesting thing is that many people who transition to a whole food plant-based diet, initially they're sometimes a little bit scared because they're eating so much food. But after a couple of weeks, they're like, wow, it's like magic, because they lose weight with a full plate.
Nice to be able to eat as much as you want, but eating good foods. That's not a bad trade-off. Now, what's the difference between just a plant-based diet and a whole food plant-based diet?
Good question. A plant-based diet is you can eat processed things like whole or wheat, flour products. They are plant-based, but they're still processed. You can eat plant-based things like that include sugar and wheat, but they're processed. And whole is, like the word includes, these foods are as less processed as possible. Of course, if you chop some tomatoes, they're a little bit processed, but not into a flour or into concentrate. For example, oil is plant-based, but it's highly processed and it's the most calorie-dense food on the planet. But they're not, or it misses all the nutrients. Like, for example, if you have walnut oil, it misses all the nutrients that are in the walnut. And this is the difference. So a whole food is, like the word includes, the fruit is whole. And a plant-based diet can be anything that is made from plants.
And I know one that is always used as an example, and it's very easy, is an Oreo is plant-based.
It's plant-based, yeah. Or Coke.
It's not whole
chips.
foods. Yeah, chips.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, so we're talking whole food. Now, how hard is it to transition? How do you transition? Let's start with what's the process of transitioning to a whole food plant-based diet?
So this is a little bit different for everybody because everybody has different preferences. But overall, I would always recommend to clean up the environment first in your home. So get rid of all the foods that are not whole food plant-based and that you don't want to eat, because the problem is, remember guys, your nervous system is designed to seek the highest calorie-dense foods in your environment. And you can control what's outside your house, but you can control what's happening in your house. And as soon as you feel hungry, I promise you, at some point, you will grab that bag of chips or some white bread or something like that, if you have that at home. So clean your environment, and then you do a big grocery shopping. And of course, with healthy foods, of course. And then at the same time, educate yourself. Read some books. And, you don't need to be perfect. You don't need to be transitioned within 24 hours. Because maybe you ate that standard Western diet for decades.
Yeah. And so what are some of the obstacles that people face when they transition to the diet, the whole food plant-based diet?
What I've noticed it in working with my clients and myself, it's the social aspect. Because I think 99% of the people will not eat the same way like you do. And we are social creatures, so we want to bond with our group, and we want that they feel comfortable, and that can be very triggering if they made that piece of cake just for you, for example, and then you might have a hard time saying no. And some personalities have a hard time saying no to things like they should not eat that are triggering for them. These are, in my personal opinion, one of the biggest obstacles for people when they transition.
All right. And so what are some of the strategies that people can use to deal with that social aspect? Because it is, let's face it, food is very social.
Absolutely. And Dr. Lisle has a beautiful approach that he calls the seam strategy. So if people ask, hey, Susie, I've noticed that you eat a different diet. Is it healthy? Or, for example, if they question, or do you get enough protein, things like that, then you can say, it seems like it works for me right now, but I think this diet is not for everybody. So the concept of this approach is that you don't make the other person feel uncomfortable. So what they fear the most is that they lose status because you eat healthy, and they know within themselves that at the moment they're not able to do that. And if you eat healthy, it's like a reflection of themselves. So try to signal as much status as possible to them. Make compliments to them. And, if they try to debate with you if you're eating a healthy diet or not, don't try to be upon them. So as if you are the expert. Then you can answer like, oh, I don't know where I get my protein from, or right now it's working for me. And also what you can do is, for example, if you say, my doctor told me at the moment that this is a good thing to do for me, but I don't know if I will achieve this for the rest of for my life, you know? Of course, and this is also personality driven. People that are more disagreeable, they have a harder time being like this nicer person. But agreeable people or people with agreeable personalities, they have an easier time using this technique.
I like it because it is easy for people to get that feeling that you're talking down to them
Exactly.
about your diet. Yeah, for sure. I get that. And so what are the benefits that your clients feel when they do this transition? And what are the key things that they find that have helped them? And how they feel like after they've gone through this?
So yeah, so of course one thing that comes is or what they hope for is weight loss, and they feel lighter body-wise, and also mentally. They feel healthier, and yeah, I always like to view or use a holistic approach when I with my clients, because it's not just about weight loss, it's about health as well. There are many benefits that they experience even after a couple of weeks. Oftentimes their blood pressure goes down, or their blood sugar levels, if they have diabetes. I had a client that had her parents died on diabetes type 2, and her levels were high as well. And after 4 weeks, she was eating more carbohydrates than ever in her life, and more food in general, lost weight, and the doctor asked her, what did you do? Your levels are optimal right now.
Wow.
Within a couple of weeks. Yeah, you can achieve such success just within a couple of weeks. It doesn't take months or years.
Wow.
And she was eating, yeah, her majority of her diet were healthy carbohydrates.
Nice. Awesome. That's really good. Now I want to get into the other side. You talked about you deal with more than just the diet, and there's the whole aspect of the psychological piece. Maybe you could talk more about that and some of the work that you do with your clients.
Of course. Yeah, a big concept along the pleasure trap, the dietary pleasure trap. So the dietary pleasure trap means that we eat foods that are super normal stimuli, like I explained in the beginning, like chips, Coke, Oreos, things like that. And at the same time, people fall into the ego trap. It's also a concept by Dr. Lisle. And the challenge is, or my task to help clients is to balance out the ego trap and the pleasure trap. And the ego trap is a situation we face where we set the bar too high. And when people try to transition to a healthy diet, oftentimes they set the bar too high. Maybe they told everybody, hey, I'm on a new diet, I'm trying to lose weight. They try to be 100% perfect, but that's impossible, because the problem is, as soon as you try to be perfect, it's almost impossible to achieve that. And your brain is wired that way, that if something is unrealistically, or the goal is unrealistically high, could be that you try to lose 5 pounds per week, which is not a reasonable amount to lose for 1 week. Your nervous system or your brain says, okay, we quit, we don't try it anymore. Why are we doing this? Because then we keep the status we already have. So it's a better idea for your brain not just not trying, because then you will keep the status you have. Your brain fears to lose status. And what I do with my clients, we set reasonable goals. And this is different for everybody. Maybe for person A is saying like 1 pound per week is a reasonable amount of weight for you, for your for your genetics, for your weight, what you are right now, in order to lose weight. And you will not tell your family and friends that you are on a diet or that you change something. You know, see it as an experiment. This is maybe for person A. And then I have person B. It's the person is obese, and people who have a lot of weight to lose initially, they maybe will lose 2 or 3 pounds per week. This is more reasonable for them.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe another goal might be, instead of changing the entire diet within one day, maybe it's just helpful to switch your breakfast from bread and peanut butter jelly to a healthy oatmeal with fruit.
Mm-hmm.
The goal is within the ego trap is, of course, your goal should be high enough that they're motivating enough, but not too high that you don't try and that you procrastinate. So this is also one part that I work with my clients, or if on their personality. You can change your personality. Some people might be more agreeable, others highly disagreeable. So I work with many agreeable people, as many women who have husbands who are at a healthy weight and can eat everything they want and they don't gain weight. And then they have to make discussions with their husbands because they need to change something in the environment in terms of the food.
Mm-hmm. And I know that's a big challenge. Maybe you could dive into that one a little bit more, because that does, it is a challenge if you're in a family and you're changing how you're eating, but you still have your partner and maybe other family members that are maybe might be resistant, or maybe you think they're going to be resistant. How do you tackle that? Maybe you could dive into that a bit more.
Yeah. So one aspect is, for example, when I dealt with binge eating, I was a mess mentally afterwards. I felt horrible. I was not a good partner for my husband. And he suffered because of that. And then because he loves me, he was willing to make compromises at home. I told him, hey, honey, we can have this and that type of food at home because this triggers me. And it took some time, and I educated him on this topic very nicely, on the pleasure trap, what it does to me. And education is one of the factors. So educate your family at home. Don't be pushy, like the food police. Oh, the food you eat is crap. This makes me sick. Don't use this way, because then the other part will push against it and will not change anything at home. But ask nicely. And in my personal opinion, if it's your family, they love you, so they respect you. And you can ask, for example, like, hey, honey, can you please have that food outside of our home? Maybe when you're on a business meeting or just outside with your friends, maybe you can have those foods not at home because they trigger me. And what also works is if you say, hey, let's do an experiment, maybe for 30 to 60 days. And if I feel better, or if I don't change, yeah, you can bring back the foods that trigger me, And this is like, for the other part, okay, it's a compromise. This is so one. Education is one thing, that you educate them very nicely. And another thing is very practical, that you have, if you eat a healthy diet. And guys, the interesting thing is that many people I talk to, and myself included, have family members at home that eat differently, or at least eat some very processed foods, like my husband does. That we have 2 fridges. We have one downstairs, and the fridge downstairs is full of healthy food. So one compromise is also you can make is buy a second fridge. You can buy a used one. I have a very old one, used one, but it does the job. And have this fridge full with prepared healthy food. Because as soon as you feel hungry or you have a craving, you open that fridge and your brain doesn't need to choose between ice cream and fruit. Because of course your brain will choose or tries to choose ice cream because it's high on calorie density. When you open your fridge, the only thing that's in there is healthy food. So you will grab one thing out there that's healthy and your craving will diminish. So this is also one technique. Or another technique that we have at home, that I have a locker. We have a locker at home. I know it sounds extreme, but guys, remember that many foods are highly addictive. And in this locker, we have all the foods that trigger me. For example, honey or Cliff Bars. You know, they're not honey, but Cliff Bars are plant-based. And they advertise it as a healthy food, but it's highly processed. It includes sugar, and it triggers me at some point. And then we lock it. And the funny thing is that sometimes my husband forgets where the key is and that he doesn't have access to his own triggering foods. And once he said, you know what, Justina, actually, it's not a bad idea. It's a good idea. Things like that, you know?
Yeah.
We need to be practical in such things. Your willpower is not enough.
I would agree with that. I love the food locker. And even better is that if you don't have the key, you're not getting in.
Yeah.
That's a good one. And so do your clients have some aha moments when they make these changes? Maybe you could talk about that, because I think that's so great.
You mean just in general and that transition to this?
Yeah,
this
just like
diet?
some things that they can't, like, just really can't believe that this is really happened. And, it's like,
Yeah.
wow, I would never believe this.
So one thing that they eat more food than ever. They never ate so much food and at the same time were at their slimmest weight ever. This is one aha moment. So eating more food to lose weight. It sounds so counterintuitive, but that's how it is when you focus on whole foods, on the foods you were designed to eat. That's one aha moment. And that their taste change. The good thing about your taste buds is that they adjust. Of course, when you come from a standard American diet and transition to a whole food diet, it will not taste as good. But as soon as your taste buds adapt, this is very individual. For some people, it's 10 days, but for some, it's 30 days. That how good these foods taste, these whole natural foods. And it's as if when you eat an apple, it's as if you're eating a candy bar. But it's healthy at the same time. This is another aha moment for my clients.
And why is it that the processed foods taste better than whole foods at first?
Yeah, because, it's like with some drugs. When let's say you're eating healthy foods, then you eat more processed foods. The pleasure centers in the brain, wow, they go up. You feel excited. But you eat those for months and years, and then it drops again, and it's here at the level. It's again in the middle. The pleasure centers of your brain are triggered in the middle. You adjust, your pleasure centers adjust. They don't get that kick anymore. And when you start to eat whole foods, your pleasure centers are triggered not even here, they drop. You think like, oh, those foods don't taste good. But that's the crucial part. When people stay here for quite a while, I would say maximum 3 months. For most people, it's even less. The level of pleasure you get from whole foods are in the middle, exactly at the same like junk food. But people need to stay for a while there.
Yeah.
It's because your nervous system adjusts to addictive foods.
And I can say for myself, I found that I had that experience where I felt I just was doing juicing and I really had to hang in there. And one day I realized I liked the taste of it. It was great. And now you lose that taste, and those processed foods don't taste good anymore either.
Exactly. They taste artificially. Of course, when I say, let's say, would eat something that's sometimes when happens maybe once a month or every couple of months when I go out to eat and the food is higher in calories than usual what I eat. Of course, my first impression is, wow, that tastes good. But at the same time, it's higher in oil. It's and I feel like nah, I'm looking forward to go back to my salad the next day with starch. Hey guys, I don't just eat vegetables. I put a lot of starch like beans, rice, quinoa, things like that into my salad. And yeah, I miss my salad when I'm on the road for a couple of days and I don't have access to fresh salad. I miss it.
That's good. So all good information. What's one simple thing that the audience and the listeners today can do starting right now that would put them towards health, positive changes in their health?
Yeah. One thing is to think in abundance. Instead of thinking, oh, I have to give up this and that, think of, wow, now I can eat so much potatoes, more than I ever did. So in short, eat more real healthy food. And the more you do that, you will have less room left for unhealthy food in